Hello! How are we all doing? Hopefully you can hear me. I have to waffle for a little bit, so I'm sure that you can hear me. So I'm going to say hello to Jammy and his mate Andy. Welcome aboard, Andy. A soon-to-be Microsoft Publisher refugee. Microsoft Publisher is sunsetting in October 2026, and I know many people watching are in the same boat, looking for an alternative. Today's session isn't a switcher session, but it will give you an idea of what Canva by Affinity by Canva can do, even. Right, I'm being told you can hear me, so that's fantastic. So who else can I say hello to before we get going? Hello, Mark, Tony, Pandemonium, Kim, Karen. Oh, we are busy, aren't we? Hello, Joe. Who else have we got in here? I'm seeing lots of Pandemoniums. I'm thinking Pandemonium's going to win that crown today, but time will tell. Okay, I think I've done the hellos and the welcomes. Let's get on with the session. So, as ever, we are broadcasting in 1080p. Make sure you are receiving in 1080p. There is a cog in the lower right-hand corner, and it should have a red HD flash on it. If not, go down there, make sure it does. While you are there, there's a like button. Not only do we like the like button, but YouTube like the like button. And the more that YouTube push our content, the better, the more content there'll be. So hit the like button as well. If you have never heard of me, I'm Elaine Giles, long-time Affinity user, since the original Affinity designer, back in beta 2014. I've used all the Affinity apps every day since then, and particularly the new one, done lots of sessions on the new one. So today, when I'm talking, this version will work with, everything I talk about will work with macOS, Windows. The iPad version of Affinity by Canva is not available yet. Most of it'll work when it is, but when it is, I'm sure we'll have a dedicated session on it. The only thing to remember is, if I say Command and you're on Windows, you'll need to use Control. I will try to remember that, but if I forget, that's what it means. So what have we got today? Well, the most important thing if you're creating a trifold brochure are the sizes of the panels, the sizes of the pages, and how to fold the thing. Then there's the old way of doing it, which we had no choice with in Affinity, up until February this year. But in February, a new method arrived, and I'll be covering both of those. I'm going to concentrate on the new way. It's more flexible, a little bit more complicated maybe, but it's more flexible. We'll be looking how you can then export what you create for print, digital versions in terms of spreads and pages, image versions, which are important if you're going to create a mock-up, which we are. So again, both spreads and pages, and then there'll be the Q&A. Right, the Q&A. Put your questions in the chat as we go. We're going to collect them, ready for the Q&A at the end of the session. You can do two things to make that easier. One, put a Q at the beginning. It'll just make it easier for us to find them. The second thing is, give me a little bit of context what you're talking about, because there is a 30-second delay on the stream. So if you say, can you show me that dialogue again? Or you make mention of a dialogue, I'm not going to know which one it was. Because when you ask the question, I will be in your future, or you'll be in my past, depending on how we look at it. So give me a little bit of context. Right, we love to read the chat. You all know that. Please keep it friendly in there. I'm not affiliated with Canva, nor Affinity, never have been, not trying to sell you anything. I've been a customer of both of them, and that is it. Right, so Trifold Brochure in Affinity by Canva. So as I said, the very first thing to think about if you're going to make a trifold brochure is the size of the page stroke spread and the fold type that you're working towards. Now, I know we have people here who will be using European sizing of A4 and also in the US letter size. So this is the brochure size that I'll be working to. I will be sticking to A4, but letter is very, very similar. It's wider in one aspect and narrower in the other. The reason that I'm going to demonstrate in A4 is the maths is easier. Seriously. I'll be working in millimeters, and it just makes it that little bit easier. But one thing to remember with Affinity is, if you're working in inches and you're thinking, great, so I'm going to have to take 11 inches and divide it by 3, you can calculate in the fields of Affinity. So instead of typing in, like I might type in, 99 millimeters, which is 297 divided by 3, you could actually type 11 inches divided by 3, and it would calculate it for you. So the maths isn't going to be difficult. I'm just going to stick with millimeters to make it a little bit easier. Now, a trifold. A trifold usually has 2 sides and 6 panels. Now, what size you choose a trifold to be, it's going to use both sides of the paper, and it is going to create 6 panels, or you're going to create 6 panels. And those panels will marry up to where the pages are folded. So what size are the panels? Well, it depends. I know that's not a great answer, but bear with me. It depends because no one size fits all. Now, I've talked about dividing things by 3, but there are more fold types, almost limitless. So the very first thing you need to do is work out which one of these you're using. Now, you may think, well, I'll just divide it by 3 and then I can fold it any way I like. Not quite that simple. Your panel size is going to depend on the fold type that you're working to. So you may have heard of gate folds, roll folds, all kinds of folds. The one I'm going to be working with today is a 3-panel roll fold. And that means think like a menu where the inside cover on the right folds in and then the side on the left folds over the top of it. That's the one I'm demonstrating. Now, that is going to look something like this. The outside of it has 3 panels, the front cover, back cover, and the inside flap. And then the other part, which is the inside of it, has 3 panels, the left side, the centre, and the right. That is what that looks like conceptually. So you still have the 2 physical pages. On the outside, you have panels 5, 6, and 1, which is the cover, the back cover, and that flap. And on the inside, you have panels 2, 3, and 4. So let's get back to that original question. What size are the panels? Believe it or not, it still depends, even once you've selected your brochure type and the size of that. Right, what does it depend on now? Well, it depends on the output that you need. So we're going to be looking at print, digital, and creating a mock-up. For print, it's critical. The size of the panels is critical. It needs to be very precise in order to fold correctly. If you're creating a digital version, you can afford to be more flexible. Because digital is shown on a screen. There's still preferences and practicalities involved, but we're not down to individual millimeters or fractions of an inch, or it just won't work. We can be more flexible. And if you're creating a mock-up, work to the size of the mock-up. Simple as that. Some of these mock-ups will have print sizes. The majority of them do not. They have their own sizes, which I will show you. So for a perfect mock-up, you need to work to the size of the mock-up. If you are 1 millimeter out, it's not a problem. I will show you how to fix it. Again, you can afford to be far more flexible. So for print output is the important one to ensure that it folds correctly. Your print service will give you precise instructions. Unless, of course, you're printing your own. And then you're on your own. It's up to you. But it is critical. So for a roll fold to fold correctly, these are the size of the panels. So on the outside page, it would be 98 millimeters, with 99 in the middle and 100 on the right. Notice that the inside, those measurements are flipped. And if you think about it, that makes total sense, because the inside is on the back of the outside, or the outside is on the back of the inside, depending on how you look at it. But those are the sizes, usually for a printed output. Trifold A4. As I've said, They will vary slightly if it's in inches, but I'm sure you can manage to work that out. It's basically the flap that's on the most inside of the fold is the smallest, and the biggest is the one on the outside that is the front cover. Now, we're going to be making our trifold brochure is going to be in all three outputs from a single file. Now, the best plan is to work to the print version because that's got the strictest requirements. But we will create a version of this that would go to print. I am actually using the output requirements from my print company. We will create a digital version of it. In fact, we'll create two. And we will make a mock-up of it, which is what you're looking at right now. So, first of all, the old way. Now, this is the manual panel method, and I'm going to show you this old way before we deep dive the new way. Now, there's nothing wrong with using this method. In fact, you may choose to use this method. It's going to depend on your specific requirements. It is simply that there is a new way which might work better for you. But there's nothing wrong with the old way. Right, let's head off and have a look at that. So, first thing I need to do is to create a new file. Now, we don't have a preset here that is trifold, where we've set everything up. We could also create a template, which is a good idea. But at this stage, how I'm going to do it is because I'm working with A4. So I just need A4. The one thing I do need to think about is the preset orientation of it. Normally, this would look portrait. But obviously, for our trifold, we need it to be landscape. I haven't made any changes to this preset at this stage, but if this is going for print, it's going to need margins and it's going to need a bleed. Or is it going to need margins? There's something to consider before we start. Well, we're definitely going to need a bleed. So let's put the bleed on it and we'll make that 3mm, which is fairly standard. Now, if I put margins in, let's do it. Let's put margins at 5mm and then create it. If we put margins in, we're giving ourselves a bit of a problem because it's at the moment an A4 page. And that means that the margins go round the whole page. And of course, we need to replicate, as it were, panels. We need to create panels. So you could leave the margin there. One thing you could do. Or you could totally rely on guides. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to leave the margin there, but I'm also going to create some guides. So I need to fake 3 panels on this. Right, the easiest way to do that is to view the guides. Now, we know what size these panels needed to be. They were 98, 99 and 100. So one thing we could do is type that in here. We can also create guides by dragging them on. So if I lose that and just drag this on, you can see we're at 90 and this one needs to be 98. Now, it can be done. I'm hovering at 98 there, but you can see it is moving as you go. That one was not quite right. So it was at the wrong position by 0.1 of a millimetre. I'm going to double click. That will open the guides window and we can see the vertical guide. Right, I can type over that and make that perfect at 98. So we have the first one. That's going to be our first panel. Now, for the second one, where does that need to be? Well, the first panel was 98 and the second one was 99. If we add 99 and 98, what do we get? Well, let's cheat and show you what to do if you don't know. So we'll drag this on. Obviously, that is well wrong. Double click it, and in here, it's at 171.3. Never mind that. Let's make it 98 plus 99. So let's get rid of that. And that will calculate it for us to be 197. Right, so we've got the panels. Are we done? No, we're not done. We are not done because we wanted margins of 5mm. And we need those margins to show where the panels are separated on that page. Margins don't work like that. They work to the physical page. So we have margins at the top, bottom, right and left, but we do not have margins where we could actually do with seeing them within the panels. But we can fix that. Right, what we can do with that is, I'm going to show you a different way of adding a margin, a guide, which is just clicking once on this option at the bottom. That puts it bang in the middle of your document, which is not where it needs to be. Where does it need to be? Well, it needs to be to the left of the first guide by 5mm. Well, the first guide's 97. Let's take 5mm off it. So 93, and that moves it. I'm going to repeat that process. So click once, it puts it in the middle again, and double click on there. This time it needs to be 98 plus 5, which is just to the other side of it. So now we've got 3 guides around the 98 mark, one 5mm to the left and one 5mm to the right. They are going to act as the margins. Then all we need to do is rinse and repeat for the other 2 panels. So add one in here, double click again, let's select all of that. This time it's working around the 197. So 197 minus 5, and the last one in there, double click, select the whole lot, 197 plus 5. And now that is set up correctly. What you would then be able to do with that is use the margin at the top and the left, and the guide at the right hand side here to create your content panel. Now your content panel could be a shape to give it colour, or it could be just text that you want to create. But before we do anything else, we have a layout for one side of this A4 file. What we could do with doing at this stage is adding another one. Now, if you add a page and you click OK, and we go down to number 2, notice what happens. We didn't tell it to set these guides up, it just did it. So let's make sure, yep, those guides are on both pages. That is the default behaviour. Now, what I say is page 1 is the outside, page 2 is the inside. So for what we were creating, and I'm not going to do the whole thing in here because it would just be a complete repeat when we get onto the new method, but I will show you that based on our mock-up, we had a shape over on this side, and that had the banquet menu on it. On this side, we had an image, and the image went the whole width of 2 panels. So that is what that would look like. Then on the inside, the whole thing had a brown background. So for that, I'd put a shape on it going into the bleed, put that over there, and then choose some kind of brown. And that's not brown, but let's keep going. And now it's brown, like that. Right, so that's the first way of doing it. And you then would do what I'm about to do on the new thing, which is add all of the other content. So I'm not going to do it here, I'm going to do it there. But at the moment, I will stop and say, do we have any questions about any of that? We have one question. Away you go, Mike.
George wants to know what the font is in the title.
In the title of what?
I'm guessing the trifold that you showed at the beginning.
If it's the trifold, I've got all the links for the content later. It is a font from Dafont called Chinese Takeaway, if that's the one you mean. And I've got all of the links for everything for Mike to put in later. Okay, that it?
Yeah, that's
right.
It.
Okay then. So that's the first way of doing it. And there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. You may have done it that way for years, but there's a new way. So what I'm going to do at this stage is save this file, because weirdness has been happening with my saving here. So this is, we'll call this old way. Right, and get rid of that. Okay. So what we had with that was we manually created all of that, and we created an inside fold. That's going to have the banquet menu on it, the back cover and the front cover. That was on the outside, And then on the other side of that, we had the inside panels for the left, the middle, and the right. What that looks like in our Pages panel is 2 physical pages, in our case A4, but they could be letter. And you can see the panels, but each of the panels is part of a physical page. So we only have 2 pages, which we would double-sided print, and that would give us the back and the front, or the inside and the outside. Now, the new way. The new way is multi-page spreads, which if you were with me last week, we looked at in relation to the wraparound covers. Now, multi-page spreads was a completely new feature added to Affinity Publisher in 2.6, which was released in February 2025. Now, that is also part of Affinity by Canva, which was obviously released the end of October. So Affinity by Canva is also referred to as version 3 of the Affinity apps. The difference between them were, in version 1 and 2, you had totally separate applications with Designer, Photo and Publisher, and with version 3, Affinity by Canva, all of those 3 applications are wrapped up into one. So let's go and have a look at that. So the new version. So I need to create a new file. And as I mentioned, there is no magic of click this and you'll get Trifold Brochure, because all the panel sizes may be different. So I'm going to start exactly the same way as I did with the last one, which is I'm going to make it A4. Now, what do I need to do in terms of the margin and the bleed here? I will create the margin and the bleed. So for the margins, they were 5mm if you remember, and the bleed was a standard 3mm bleed. And create the document. Obviously, we are now at exactly the same point we were at this stage with the old way. But what we're going to do now is change everything here. So I need multiple pages, and this time, instead of having just 2 to represent 3 panels, we're going to have 6 pages to represent the 6 panels within the trifold. But I'm going to do the first 3 first because they need to go together. So from my add pages, I'm going to say to add 2 pages. Now, you may think you know what happens here, and indeed it will. If I say 2 for the number of pages and I click OK, we get 3 A4 pages. That's not what we need to do. So I'm going to undo that and go back into it. So we do need 2 pages, but the spread wrapping options at the bottom are new. So I'm talking about these options here. So these weren't there for 7 years. They have just appeared. Flowing pages is the default behavior. And what that does is it adds extra pages. 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to need. That's why it's the default. But in our case, we want to extend the spread to add 2 pages to it. So all you need to do is click Extend Spread. If you are creating a new spread completely, then that's what the option at the end is for. It would not add pages to this existing page. It would create a completely new spread with the 2 pages we want to add. But that's not what we want to do. We want to extend the 1 page we already have. And click OK. Right, a couple of things have happened. So I'm showing the full width there because the first page was A4 and it was landscape, and that's why it's very, very wide. Also, in the Pages panel, we now have 3 pages, but the display of those 3 pages is totally different to when we had 3 pages vertically stacked on top of one another. This is what a spread looks like. But it's far too wide. I mean, you can have trifold brochures that look like that, but that's not what we're aiming for. So we need to rescale these pages. So if I right-click on here and choose Spread Properties, this is the Spread Properties dialog box, which will enable us to change the width of these things. Right, initially the entire spread is selected, but there are 2 ways to select just the individual pages. So the first one is to click on a page, we go back to spread. The second one is to click on select pages and it will select a page for you. Now, if what we were doing here was nice and simple for a mock-up, we could stay in the spread, which is all of them, and we could say in here, page width 99. And that would give us 3 panels. And those 3 panels would be equal. They would be 99 millimeters wide. The problem with that is that's not the situation here because this is going for print. So if it's a mock-up you're creating, it's simple, do that. But let me come out of that and show you what you would need to do if you've got 3 panels that are going to be different sizes. Right, I have dreadful trouble with this dialog box. I would that it would work properly. I will show you how to make it work properly. Which is, I've got the 3 pages, each one needs to be a different size. So I definitely need to select one individual page. Then, where it's set to 297 at the moment, I am going to type in there 98. When I press enter, it sorts that out and it makes it 98. I think at that stage, particularly if I move to another text box here, if I go to this page, it should remember that. It doesn't remember that. This threw me at the beginning. So the best way I found to do this, so you don't end up in a mess, is set the first panel and click OK. That kind of locks it. If we go back into the spread properties, we go to the second one. That needed to be 99, so put 99 in. You can, at that stage, you can go and check the width of these things, but let's get them all set up properly first. So spread properties again, last page, this one needs to be 100. And OK. Now, they are correct. How do we know they're correct? Well, we've set them correctly, haven't we? Let's go back into here and have a look. So this one, 98, that one, 99, that one, 100. It's only when you're setting them initially that this dialog box takes one on itself. OK, we have a setup. Absolutely perfect. 3 separate pages. Now, just to show you this, you could duplicate that. Would that work? Something to ponder. Would it work? Because in the last demonstration, we duplicated the page. It was fine. It won't work here. It won't work here because what you would end up with is an exact replica of that. And we know that pages 4, 5 and 6 need to have their measurements flipped. But we could do that. So if I draw around those to make sure I've selected all of them, and I then right click and duplicate 3 pages. It looks right, but it's not right. So on the second one, I'm going to go into the spread properties. We will look at the width of this. It is 98. What size should it be? Well, it's the reverse of the last one. So that should be 100. So I will put 100 in that one, come out, and then go back in again. The middle one is 99. That doesn't need changing. So we have 90, we have 100, we have 99. We just need this end one to be 98. So let's go in there and type 98, press enter and OK. Once we've locked it in place, we can go back in and make sure that we have 100, 99 and 98. And OK. And we now have the embryonic beginnings of our menu. Now, what I'm going to do at that point, not that I don't trust it, but trust me, I don't trust it, right, is I'm going to save that file. So we'll put that in there as menu OTN, which to me means on the night. This is what I created live. Right, so we've got all of our pages there. We are ready to go. So what do we need to do next? Well, you may think, oh, get in there and start creating panels and placeholders. And no, don't do that. Now, I happen to know with this that I'm going to need set colours. I'm going to need colours for the branding. I'm going to need colours for the heading. I'm going to need colours for the text. I'm going to need lots of colours. There are 4 of them to be precise. And the best practice for that is not to just whip through and format it on the fly. The best practice is to use global colours in a document palette. So over here we have our colours in the swatches panel, and we have system palettes, we have application palettes, and we have in here Pantone. What we do not have at the moment is a document palette. Now, at the beginning, I mentioned Windows users. Windows users, you are missing out. You do not have system palettes. So this group in the middle here, these are the system palettes that we have on Mac. That would be good. Let me leave that there while I go and open them, and hopefully I got them. Right, this middle bit here that I've sort of highlighted in red. These are system palettes. They are provided by Mac OS. You do not have that on Windows. They are incredibly useful. Maybe Windows and Microsoft will come around to our way of thinking, but don't be concerned if you don't have any of these. These you will have. These are application palettes. These are only available within Affinity. Right, but what we need is the one that isn't there at all. So there's two ways to do that. If we choose to add a global colour, and I will explain what that is, it will automatically create us a document palette because it's the only place they can live. The alternative is to create a new palette, and notice we have three options here, Windows users will have two, that I can create a document palette. So I will use the method where I add a global colour, and that brings up the global colour dialog. Within here, the first one I'm going to create is what I'm calling branding. So you need to give it a name, and this is branding. So it's going to be a very dark brown. And I have just copied the hex code for that and pasted it in at the bottom. As soon as you move out of that text box, you can see that the sliders moved here. And if I do this, you can see the preview in this square there. Now, obviously, that's not the colour I want. That's the colour I want. And OK. I didn't call it brown because if the branding colour changes, I don't want to have to rename the colour. It's just the branding. Then I need to create another global colour for the text headings. So I'll do exactly the same again, which is add global colour. This one is going to be text and headings. I name them with what they are at the beginning, text, followed by headings, followed by whatever. Now, in this case, there isn't anything else. I will show you what colour that is. It's a bright red kind of colour. The reason that I name it with text at the beginning is so it sorts correctly. Eyeballing wise, it's going to be easier for me to be able to see that. So let's add that one. And we've got two more to add. So add another global colour. This one, you may think, oh, you don't need that to be a global colour, which is, it's the text primary. So it's the text I'm going to be using the most. And the reason that you may think when I show you what the hex code is, if you know your hex codes, FFFFFF is white. But if I want to change that colour, I might want it to sort of have a hint of lemon. Then notice I've not called it text white. I've not called it white. It's primary. But it enables me to change it easily. At the moment, it's white, but global colour. So let's add that. And the last one that I need is going to be for a background. So let's go in and add a global colour for that. This one is going to be the background of the text. So I'm putting text in again, and I'm putting background. And this is what the colour of that background is. It's very, very dark. It would help if I could spell. Quite dark, but I'm going to have it with a transparency effect on it. And add that. Notice that while I said it's easier because they're alphabetical, text background is at the bottom. You can reorganize these. You can just drag them about. But I'm putting text background at the bottom because while it is related to the text, it's not a colour of the text. So I've got the best of both worlds in here. I know it's to do with the text, but the backgrounds are behind or below all of the headings here. And that's it. That is my global colours set. Global colours live in a document palette, and a document palette, as the name implies, lives within a single document. The others do not. So if we look at Affinity branding down to WebSafe, if I were to make a new file, And we'll go into there. You can see in my colours, I have all of my system palettes and I have all of my application palettes. But notice document palette, not there, because it only lives in a single document, which is this document. Right, so far so good. Right, now we can put the content in, can't we? No, don't do that. Right, the reason I'm saying not to do that, once you've done this work up front, the rest is plain sailing. So what do I need to do? Well, we need some text styles. Now, I'm only going to create 4 text styles. We only need 4 text styles. But by default, these are the text styles that will be created automatically for you. If you don't want to use them, that's fine. But I would suggest that you at least edit some of these styles and certainly change the display of your text styles panel. I have this showing by type and hierarchical as well. And that means that my base style, which is, think of the styles as being a style tree. My body style is based on my base style. My bullets style, bullets 2, is based on bullets 1 and bullets 1 is based on base. And that's why showing the hierarchy is really useful. Now I'm going to be using 2 of these styles, heading 1 and heading 2. But I am going to edit the base style before we do anything else. So I'm going to edit the base style in here, and we are going to look at the style here. It's not based on anything and it's a group. But within here you can set a font family, which is going to be the default. And the default for this is going to be Poppins. So I've just changed that to Poppins. That's the only change I'm making at the moment. Right, the next thing I need to do is to have a text box to put some text into. So I'll go and get a text box and we'll just draw it out. We're going to be able to delete this when we finish because it's not our content. This is just what I'm doing to create the text styles. And I've said we need 4 of them, and these are the names of them. Right, the reason this isn't Poppins at the moment, you might be wondering, well, just a minute, it's Arial, and you've just set base to Poppins. None of these styles apply automatically, none of them. So we've got no style, no paragraph style, and no character style either. We do, however, have the names of the styles. So heading 1 already exists. Let's apply heading 1. And heading 2 already exists. Let's apply that. Right, these 2 do not exist, and these 2 need editing. So we'll start off with heading 1. And I have a definition of that I can look at. So there is my heading 1. Right-click on heading 1 and choose to edit it. Right, now what changes do I need to make here? Well, I need a different font. So I'm changing the font to Impact. And we can see that changing behind the scenes there. The size of it needs to be 16 points. So I change the size. The colour of it needs to be different colour. So at the moment, the default is black. But I'm going to change the font colour. Now I could choose a font in here, a colour. I could paste the hex code in. But remember, we have swatches in our global documents palette. And in here, the headings are going to be that colour. So we've applied the colour. Right, the alignment needs to be centre, which it already is. And then we need to look at the spacing, which is the before and the after. Now, because heading 1 is based on the base style, it's got no change all the way through. What it means is anything that you do to the base style, which is not contradicted in here, will apply. So we've made a couple of changes already, but we do need to change the spacing before and the spacing after. Right, we don't want any space before, so 0 there. And I do believe 8 works for after. And that is all we need for a heading 1. So we've redefined heading 1. Let's go in and redefine heading 2. Right click, edit heading 2. Let's go back up here. You can see it's based on the base style. And in here, what is the font family? Well, the font family also needs to be Impact. So choose Impact. And the size of this one is 12 points. So making that change as well. The colour of it is going to be our text headings. So let's do that. And our spacing before and spacing after needs to be set. So going to the spacing, our spacing before is 6 and our spacing after is 4. I'm hoping these are right. Fingers crossed, hey? Right, now we need to format the menu item. So this is for each menu item. And in here, we need to create a new style completely. So make a new style. Start from the top. The reason being, that style is going to be based on something. Now, you could have this independent or you could have it based on base. Really doesn't matter. I think I'm going to leave this independent for the moment, which may or may not be a good thing. We'll find out when I come to style everything. But the font face that we're going to use is Poppins. Now, actually, we wouldn't have had to have set Poppins in here if we'd have based this on the base style. So shall we do that and save a little bit of work? Let's base it on the base style. If everything else goes wrong, that'll be what caused it. But no, fingers crossed. Right, so based it on base. Right, it set that to Arial. That's crazy, because I want no change there. Right, let's set it that. That is Poppins the font. That's fine. Right, size-wise, this needs to be 10 points. So let's do that. And we need to change the colour as well. So let's go down here. And the colour is in the colour and decorations. At the moment, it's set to black. That is not what we want. So let's go into there and choose a colour. Now, it needs to be text primary. It needs to be white. So let's set it to white. Notice what's happened in the document. Totally vanished. But that's what we expect. That is actually correct. We're going to only have this on a background. So I'm going in here to the spacing. And in the spacing here, I'm seeing weirdness with this, but I'm going to plow on. If it all goes wrong, I'll fix it. Right, our spacing before is 0 and our spacing after is 4. So let's put 4 in there. Right, obviously we can't see that now. So just so we can see it, I'm going to put a box behind it. That at the moment is on the top. Let's move it behind it and let's fill it with our branding colour. And now we can see menu item. But what we can't see very well, it's there, trust me, is menu item banquet. But that's going to be fine because we're going to go and sort that out. We're going to go and make another new style. So back to the text styles here. I'll do that so we can see it, but we're not going to be able to see it all because we're going to go in and make a new paragraph style. Right, so this one is a menu item. Did I name that? I didn't. I need to go and sort that out as well. Right, so this one is for the banquet. I will base it on base. It is going to be the same font, so I'm not going to need to make a change here, although this is doing weird things. Why does it never do this in rehearsals? Right, it always works perfectly. Right, so we need this to be smaller. So this one is actually very tiny. It's at 7 points. The colour of it is, again, one of our global colours, which is text primary. And there you can see it appearing behind here, being formatted. And our spacing for this, we need to change the alignment on this one as well. This one's going to be aligned. So in our paragraph, it's not aligned to the left, it's going to be centred. So that's moved it across there. And in our spacing, we want that to have 4 points after, 0 before and 4 points after. Right, so what that now looks like is that. This bit, we're not keeping this particularly. This is just to create it. So let's go out and look at the whole page. Right, they are created. The only thing I need to do is edit the style because that was menu item and I forgot to name it. Don't call style styles. Doesn't work well. Right, I can actually delete all of this now. Not needed. So let's get rid of the whole thing. So select that. Okay, be awkward, why don't you? Right, so the only reason I created those placeholders was to create the styles and we're now done. Now, why did I do that? Well, at this stage, this menu could be for Chinese, it could be for Italian, it could be for Indian, it could be for anything. This might be a good point to make a template with no content in it, but with your global colours in it and your text styles in it, before you put any content in. On the other hand, it may be better done later when you've got some content in it, if the content you have put in it is standard for all documents that are going to be based on this. So, for instance, pages 4 to 6 would have text frames in them. So the point at which you make the template is completely up to you. But how you make the template is to go to File, go to Export, and export it as a template. I always explain where I put my templates, which is in Dropbox. I have in here my templates. So in my application support, I have Affinity. In here, I have templates. And in there, I have places that I would put them. So probably layouts with this one. Maybe I would create a menu option. And it wouldn't say on the night. It would just be Trifold menu. Or Trifold Brochure, depending on what you're doing with it. So Trifold Brochure. Let's get rid of the menu. And put that in one of these. So let's just put it in layouts and save. What that means is, if I then go and make a new file, and I choose my templates, and I choose layouts, there is my Trifold Brochure, and I can create another one in a different style entirely. But the point at which you create that template is completely up to you. Right, finally, we're going to put some content in. Excellent! So make sure that we are on pages 1 to 3. Now, which of these is the front cover? It's the one on the right. I'm going to start with this one on the left, which is the banquet. And for that, I'm going to put a shape behind it. Now, when I first did a shape in here, the shape came through and it was grey. And now it's the right colour. It's not only the brown, it's actually the branding. So you can change it if you like, but it actually defaults to the branding colour. And the reason that it does that is it always remembers the last colour that you used, the last settings that you used. Having got that in place, I'm not going to make any changes to that whatsoever. So it's a good idea to lock it. The next thing this needs is a text frame to put the banquet text in. So I'm going to go and draw this. It's a bit tricky over a dark background, but there it is. And the same holds true for your text frames. So instead of it having the original text that it had, which was black and Arial, it's not. It's got a totally different font in here. But what we're going to do, and I'm looking at it thinking that's not the font I was expecting, but never mind, we will press on. I've got the content of the banquet in a text file. So I will show you what that text file looks like. There it is. So we can see that we've got what would be a heading 1 at the top, and then we've got banquet A, we've got banquet B and C. So that is the text that we'll be bringing in. We could copy and paste it, or you could place the text. So if I go to File and Place, and I come out of my layouts and I go into where my text is, so this is the copy I'm using, and there is the set text for the banquet. We can open that and it will put it in there. Totally formatted incorrectly, but we're not going to worry about that. Not at this moment, we're not. Why is my heading 1 doing weirdness? Right, let's go in and make sure the font's correct. I've said impact. Why are you not doing that? Right, we will select it all. And I'm going to try and make sure that we clear character styles. Right, by doing that, I've applied that heading 1. So when you apply formatting, it can be a style, which you should use, or it can be just ad hoc formatting. And if you want your style to work perfectly, as you've just seen there, the font was incorrect. You need to right-click on it and apply it, but choose to clear the character styles before it applies it. Otherwise, you've got a mishmash of styles, and that is never good. Right, so we've sorted that out. It is, however, completely incorrect because that's not what it's supposed to look like. The majority of this text actually needs to be the banquet format that we created, which was this tiny, tiny thing here. So when you're working with text, work out which is the majority, which is, in this case, it should be menu item banquet, and then apply the changes, the exceptions. So banquet set menu is a heading 1. Banquet A is a heading 2. Banquet B is a heading 2. And I'm looking at that now and I'm thinking, oh, you made a mistake there. Right, but it can be sorted. Right, so in here, there's C. Let's apply C as well. Right, what I didn't do when I was creating that style was center it, and it needs to be centered. So you can do that retrospectively, nothing catastrophic here. All we need to do is to go into the style and edit it, and in our paragraph where it says no change, it means that that is coming from the base style. But the base style is left aligned, and we want this to be center aligned. So we make it an exception from the style tree. And we're done. We have our first content. At this point, you could choose to lock that. It would just depend whether you intend to make any changes or whatever. The next thing we need to think about is the front cover and the back cover. And the front cover and back cover shared an image. So I'm going to put an image frame on here. Notice, because this is going for print, I am taking the frame and the shape here into the bleed. And then I'm going to go and find the image. So I've added a frame for it, and I'm going to go and find the image. And my images, I've got 2. I will show you these images. So this is one of them, and this is the front cover. So this is the one we're going to use for the front cover. Again, I've got links for all of these. These are actually from Envato. So that's the one I'm using. So let's drag and drop that in. And then I just need to position it. And because I've created a picture frame, I can drag this about and not be too worried about it. So I think it needed to be, from memory, about there. Now, I'm not going to need to make changes to that unless I realise something catastrophic happened and I need to move it. So because I'm going to work with text on top of it, it would probably be a good idea to lock that as well. And as I said, you can lock that banquet if you like. So everything that we've done so far is now locked. We're going to put a placeholder now for where we're going to put the text. And what we're going to do with that is, this is the front cover, and I'm looking for the size of this. I need this to be 58. I'm going to draw this out, and it needs to be 58 high. So I'll make it 58, and then move it into position, which was avoiding both of the bowls, so it sat between them. Notice it has applied a colour, and the colour it has applied is the branding colour. But we want this to be a slightly different colour because it's behind the text. Not that much different, but it's different. But as well as that, I need a little bit of opacity on that. So I will make that 75% opaque as well. That is the background for the text. So it can be locked. You'll thank me later for this, because if I didn't lock it and then I started trying to move the text and I picked the background up, bad words would be said. Right, the next thing to add is the text. So clicking there, it was called Dragon's Delight. So let's get that in there. Now this has no text style on it, which is why it's black and Arial. I haven't created a text style for this because it's really a one-off. And this is using the Chinese takeaway font, which is this one. It does, however, need to be the colour of the primary. And let's make it a bit bigger so we can see it. Now, it really needs to fill that space. So I'm actually going to put a carriage return in there, and that way I can make it much, much bigger. Still not quite right, though. So I want it to be the width that I've got there. So it's between the margins of our page. It's a little bit close. It could do with having a little bit more space, and it could do with centering because it looks a little odd. So I'll centre it first. And I actually don't think we need it quite to the edge. I think it'd look better a little bit further in. But the text of this is a little bit too tight in terms of the vertical spacing. So we can go into here and we can edit that. But if you click the drop down instead and you say percentage height, it's a little bit easier. You can see at the moment it's 101. And as soon as you see the 101, you think, okay, so that's virtually the default. I'm definitely going to need at least 10% more than that. And that way you're not guessing in terms of numbers, you're putting in a percentage. In this case, I think you could get away with much more than that, and it would probably be a better idea to do that. So we've now got the text of the front cover. Again, not going to make any changes to that, so we could probably lock it. There's only one more thing that this needs, which is on the back cover, which is the middle panel. And that is, it needs another shape here. This time it's going the full width, I do believe. Height-wise, that needs to be 40, so that's a little bit too much. And then I can place that, I think, wherever I want. So wherever looks best here. Now, usually that's in terms of what is in the background. I don't need with this one to do as much work as I did last time with this one, because it remembers the last set of settings, which means that this should be the text background, but it was at 75% and it remembered that. And in here I need two things. I need the Dragon's Delight again, and I need the address. So the Dragon's Delight I'm going to put in artistic text. So click there, and Dragon's Delight. Wondering what spelling calamity I'm going to make. Like I've put a G and not a D. Oh dear. Right, there we go. Never type in real time, especially not publicly. Right, so let's stretch that across. Now, because this one goes to the edges, the background, I think we can take that up to the margins. Now, the address is, I think I just put any town, any place, anywhere. I'm going to put that in as frame text. And let's put that across there. Now, this time, let's have any street in any town. We could put, oh, notice what's going on here. I'm going to have to explain all that now, aren't I? Right, any postcode, let's put that in. I think actually it had the phone number. So let's just put 000 2 3 1 2 3 4. Right, now, what on earth is going on here? Well, this was the last text style we used, so that's why that's there. Why, when I pressed enter, did it change the style? Right, well, first of all, what style is this? Let's go have a look. It's a heading 2. So let's edit the heading 2 and have a look. All the way up here, right, it's based on based. The next style is set to body. So what's happening is it's automating the formatting by formatting this as a heading 2, and then as soon as you press enter, it applies the body style, which is not what we want here. But that is what it's doing. We can override all of that. I then pressed enter, and there's the phone number. But notice it was outside the size of the box, which was why I had an eyeball over here and this triangle. The eyeball enables you to see overflowing text, and the triangle enables you to take the text overflow from this frame and add it to another frame. But that is not what we need to do. So what we do need to do is format all of this. So I'm going to take all of it. I could create a style for this, but it's probably faster just not to. So if you just want to format something, you go through and you manually format it. It would need to be text primary, and it would need to be centered. So I'm going to center all of that. Hang on. Center. And what else have we got in here? I probably put there these I would probably have closer together like that. And that isn't formatted. But what I could do is now create a style from that if I need to. Right. That is our first spread layout of 3 pages. Okay, I'm contemplating at this stage. Do I need to think about any questions? Do we have a lot of questions? Are they relevant at this stage? Okay, we've got a few questions. Let's take a car park break and have some questions.
Right. The first question is from Ignacio.
Mm-hmm.
Curious to know the advantage to starting with A4 versus letter.
That's just pure preference or what your printer is going to do. In Europe, we tend to use A4. A4 works nicely in terms of the measurements. If you're working with millimeters are incredibly tiny. I'm calling them incredibly tiny for our American friends and anywhere else that uses the old imperial system. So millimeters are so tiny that it divides by 3 beautifully. But if your printer says, well, we print to letter size, then you're going to have to use letter size. So it's either a personal choice or based on your printing.
Okay, from Awake Cat, can you copy and paste document palettes to another document?
Not copy and paste per se, but what you can do is export and import. Make a note of that and I'll demo it at the end, Mike.
Okay. Annie says you'll probably cover this later, but is there a way to have a font colour change across a light and dark background, i.e. white over dark, dark over light?
Oh, I do wish so. No, not that I've found. If you've got 2 panels here, so you're going from a dark panel to a light panel, you can have 2 styles, and my default styles, that's exactly what they look like. But what you can't do is have the frames linking and then it automatically changing. I'm not sure if you could do that with the old Page Plus setup with themes. Peter would know the answer to that, wouldn't he? So we'll try and get an answer to that, but not that I've found. No, not automatically.
Another one from Ignacio. When creating paragraph styles, do you plan ahead for different options you'll need? For example, space before, space after font size.
It's very difficult to do that before you set it up because it's going to depend on the content. So if you look at what we've got there, how did I know to set it up like that? I've done this demonstration about 200 times. So when I initially started it, I just randomly put some sizes in that I thought ballpark would do, and then I refined it as I went. So you're never really going to know. But that's why I would say at the point that you create the template, you can always edit styles. No problem at all editing styles. So as long as the styles are there to edit. So at least your style tree is in place, but the definition of the individual styles, you would tweak as you go along, but you can't really predict it very well.
Okay, when you're talking about text placement, what format does the text need to be in?
Mine was just plain text.
That's from Tish.
I will show you what happens with Markdown. You'll love that. But mine is just plain text. I didn't bring it in from Word or anything, because if I copy and paste from Word or an RTF editor, it's going to bring its own styles with it, and it's going to make an almighty mess of the text styles panel.
Okay, and Joho says when you place text, can you later change the text file and have it carrying over?
You can if you use a new feature within Affinity by Canva. It is not available within Affinity Publisher, which is to place the file, but place it linked rather than place it embedded. And I paste it embedded.
And that's it.
The only problem with doing that, I should caveat that at that point, is if you do change the text. If it's a spelling mistake, you're fine. But if you're adding 3 different dishes to it, then it could end up with overflowing text. So you would have to be very careful about that. But you can now do it. It's linked text rather than embedded. Okay, so let's move on and create the second half of this. Right, we need a background. The good news is the background for this would go across all of the pages. So we will draw across. Notice we do not have the branding brown. We have the default of what we used last time, which is not what we want. But it's very simple to just click the colour that we've got in our swatches. That background not going to need to be changed. So lock it. So you'll find yourself switching between the textiles and the layers because you'll be working with it and unlocking things. Right, the next thing we need are text frames to hold the menu items. Or do we? Well, we did in the original, if you can remember the original from the slide, we had an image in this lower right-hand corner. So probably putting that in next would be a good idea. Just purely for the fact that if we do that now and then we lock it, we're not going to have problems with it later. So it is going to be an image. It is going to be sort of halfway. Well, there's a little bit of it that's going in the middle frame. But if you look at that, I'm taking it out to the bleed. And I think, know what size it needs to be. So let's have a look at my image. It needs to be 111 wide. So I'm a little bit too wide there. And it needs to be 100 tall. Right. And then it needs to be put back in place, doesn't it? Like that. Right. At that stage, I can add the image to it. So I showed you 2 images. This is the second one. And that's what it's used for. Now, I can't stop this dialog box either, and it drives me insane. I want to embed these images and not link them. Despite the fact I've told it that, it pops this up virtually willy-nilly. No, I do not want to link to them. Now, your mileage may vary. Maybe you do want to link to them, but I don't want to link to them. Right, so I've got my image in there. I'm not going to make any changes size-wise, but if we look at what we've got, it's a little bit too harsh. The transition between the background and the image is a little bit too harsh. So what this image needs is to be masked around the edges to be a little softer. Now, so far, we've worked in the Layout Studio. So how Affinity have rolled 3 apps into one is by saying Vector, that was Designer, Pixel, that was Photo, and Layout, that was Publisher. And I've spent my time in Layout. Just as an aside, I usually hide this. If you're looking for your Data Merge Studio, you won't have one. It's a custom one that I made. That's why it's there. So for this one, I really need a photo editor. So if I go into my Pixel persona, I've got the right tools for this job, which is I want to put a mask on this image, and then using a brush and it being very soft, I want to soften the edges. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. Right, this is my brush and I am painting here on the mask layer. But notice up here, I don't have black and white, which is usually what you have when you're working with a mask. If you press the D key, you will change those to black and white. You can switch between them then, so keep your eye up here with the X key. That will swap them backwards and forwards. So if I swap that, you can see what's happening with it. Now it is actually taking a little bit of time to switch, which is very strange. Right, you're going to work for me. I'm not at all sure that you are at this point. Let's switch, that's better. So we get even a preview. So if we look at this, you can see that the edges are disappearing. And if I click and drag down, I'm painting away the harsh edges. Now for the left-hand side, that's fine. If I try and paste away at the top, I'm going to lose part of that. So I'd make the brush a little bit smaller and just work into that, just trying to get the edge of it like that. And obviously, if you've got all day to do that, great, but that's good enough. It's good enough. And at this point, having done that, lock that layer. Command and 0 or Control and 0 will take you out to the full view. Make sure you go back to Layout View because the rest of the stuff is in Layout View. So the next thing we're going to do is to put the text frames on it. So I'm drawing out the first one, drawing out the second, and we can put in the third. And we got a couple of choices with this. We could take it all the way down, or we could stop it here. Obviously, we don't want text outside of there, but we should be able to format it so it doesn't go further than that. Right, we need to put some text in it. But before we do that, I'm going to show you that at the moment, these frames are not linked. Right, if I put some filler text in, so insert filler text, we can actually visualize this. You need to link these frames together so when you bring in the menu items, it ripples across 1, 2, and 3. So how you do that is click on the triangle and then click over here and click on the triangle again on that one and then click on the third one. The filler text will fill through it, just so you are able to visualize that. Right, at that point, we can get rid of the filler text. These frames are now linked. So instead of them being independent, we now have a blue line, which is there and there, indicating that those frames are linked. That's what that means. And we need to place the text. So I'll just show you, because we have had that question, that in the document setup in here, I said embedded here. So you can see under resources, I've said embedded for images. And there is an option here to import text files as linked. So you would actually have to slide that on if you wanted to do that. I don't want to do that. I just want to place it inside this file. But if you wanted to make updates external to your Affinity file, then you could link to that file. So in here, file, place, go and get it. These are our menu items and OK. Now this looks totally different. There's a lot of differences with this. Right, irrespective of what it actually looks like, which is the base style by the look of it, I need to point things out. This file itself, so let me open the text file so you can see the text file, which is that one. It has Markdown in it. I can actually visualize that for you by changing the format to Markdown. Now, a Markdown file is a simple text file. It uses hashes for headings. So the starters is a heading 1, the mains is a heading 1. These dishes are heading 2s, and if we go down, we have desserts as a heading 1 as well. And that is exactly what it has brought in. There's the starters, the mains, and the desserts over there. And we also have all of these dishes here. Now, there's a couple of ways we could go from here. We could go through and manually delete these hashes and manually apply, in this case, a heading 2. Or we could let Affinity do all the work. That's a good idea. Let's do that. But before we do that, you need to be thinking about what, and I have said this once, but this will really, I hope, illustrate why it's important. What format is the majority of this text? And it would be menu item. It would be a style of menu item, right? Which it is not at the moment. So it's always a good idea to apply the style that would apply to most of it. Now, you may say, well, why don't you just do that later? Because if I go through this and format this as a heading 1 and a heading 1 and a heading 2, when it comes to format all of the menu items, I would need to make a selection of them and apply, the second lot and apply, the third lot and apply. I'll be there all day. Don't do that. Select all of it and apply the most common style, which is menu item, which looks like that. Then sort the differences out, but don't do it manually. So what I'm going to do, it's on Windows somewhere, I think it references. Oh, it's somewhere in here. Right, there we go, text. Window, text, find and replace. That will open up the find and replace dialog box. What is it we're trying to find? Well, we want to sort out the heading 1s and the heading 2s. Have a think about it. Why do we not do the heading 1s first? And that would be because, let's go and have a look at them. If I do a search for the heading 1s with hash space, it's going to say, yep, that's fine, and that's fine, and it's also going to find that, and it's going to do it wrong. So, if you're replacing markdown headings, work backwards. Even if you've got 6 of them, work backwards. Because this is unique. If I had a heading 3, it wouldn't be. Then it would be hash hash space. No, hash 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 space. Do the lowest level heading first, or the one with the most hashes. So in the find, we will put in hash hash space. What would we like that replaced with? Well, we want it replaced with a style. Oh, not text. We're not replacing it with, Fred in there, but that's okay because we have the cog. And in the cog, we can choose to replace with a paragraph style. And in this case, it's a heading 2. Right. It's going to give you a safety net before you even do this. So you click your find and you can look and check. And there are indeed 6 groups of dishes with level 2 headings. So all we now need to do is replace all. That applies the style and it centers it. Notice it does not delete the hashes, but we can do that. You go back to the cog and you reset the formatting. And then you say replace all. And it deletes the hashes. Now all we need to do is work on the second heading, which is the heading 1. So 1 hash under space. We want that replaced with a heading 1. Do the find. There's 3 sections. Replace all. Go back, reset the formatting, and redo it. Now, you've seen this across 3 pages in one spread. I've done that in 300-page documents with 6 levels of heading, and it works just as well. Now, if they would just enable me to automate that so I can do all 6 at once and not have to do the job 12 times, 6 to replace the styles and 6 to remove the hashes, that would be grand. Maybe somebody from Canva's watching and they could fix that for me. Just saying, that'd be good. But for something like this, it's still worth doing rather than doing it manually. But it really comes into its own the more pages you've got. Right, so we're looking pretty decent so far, isn't it? Right, let's whip back to the pages. Right, the next thing we need to do is, because this is a bit messy at the moment, isn't it? It could do with being formatted a little differently. Right, how could we do that? Well, we're going to need to edit the menu item style because the prices are not aligned properly. So let's go and edit the menu item style. This is the jeopardous bit for me because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And poor Mike has sat here all week with me saying very bad words when it doesn't work. So fingers crossed, hey? Right, the first thing I need to do is look at tab stops. There are no tab stops in here at the moment. And I need to create 2 tab stops. So the first one I'm going to create needs to be at 8mm. Right. Well, that didn't cause any calamities, did it? So fingers crossed. Right. The next one needs to be at 71mm. And what we're trying to do with that is move the prices to the right-hand side, which we've now done, and they look great. Or do they? Well, let's come in and have a look. Now, I can't zoom in with that, but what I will do, I'll OK it and zoom in so we can see a little bit better what's happening. So let's put that there. It's jumping. Right, what I'm going to do with this is say that egg drop soup, what if it were £99.99? Oh, well, now havoc has happened, hasn't it? That's moved down there and all sorts has happened. But pretty much the issue here is that is not aligned properly. What we really need to do, you might think, is align it to the left. To the right, rather. And aligning it to the right, it might look okay, but we're never quite sure. We're not going to be quite sure with that. Right, so let's move that so we can see it and go back in and have a look what we can do automatically, which is we have different types of tabs. So in this drop down here, there's what looks like an L in it. That just happens to be fortuitous that it looks like an L. It's left aligned. But we also have the option for center alignment, right alignment, and decimal alignment. Now, if you choose a right alignment, it does align to the right and it doesn't look bad. But trust me, it's not actually right. If you have the option, if what you're aligning is a price, use the decimal. And that will align properly. So you can now see that the £5.50 and the £99.99 are aligning correctly. So those are what I need in terms in here of tabs. But still not right, is it? Because if you try and eyeball that from the chicken and look across, it's easy to go wrong. Particularly if you've got like the starters where there's a big collection of them. So In the next option on that second tab, you can have no leaders. You can have a dot, an underline, or you can strike out. Well, let's try the glyph. Oh, now that looks great. So now, going from the text to the price, we have a dot leader. Perfect. Right, let's get back in here and fix some stuff before we need to worry about this. Right, that is formatted incorrectly now. Notice it's saying menu item. And it needs to be a heading 1 and clear anything else to put it back in the middle. This bit here, that's a little bit too much for egg soup, isn't it? So let's make that £3.99, that's fine. Right. We still have one thing missing, which is, and I know this is, usually it's associated with the Chinese menu, isn't it? Where you order by number. Half the time you can't pronounce things. So having these items numbered would also be great. So let's go back into there. Now, we could sit here and we could number them. You could even have the items numbered already. So that there is a text file and the items are numbered. Don't do that, because it's a nightmare if you need to remove one or add one. Then you've got to renumber everything. So how about we have it do it automatically? That'd be good, wouldn't it? So let's go back into the menu item. And this time we are looking at bullets and numbering. So let's make sure we can see everything. Right, there is no list at the moment in here. What we want is a list that's numbered like that. So far, so good. The starters look amazing. But look at the poultry dishes. Look at the beef and lamb. They're restarting, which is what happens. When you apply a list style, when the format changes, so you've applied a heading 1, the numbering stops and then it starts again. And that's not what we want. But we can fix that. So the trick is, in the name in here, you name your list. Because this list needs a name to be global to the document. And what you're going to say to it is, just number the whole lot, irrespective of what headings are between my text. So we'll call it menu items, because, you know, that's what it is. And we'll make it global, like that. Now, it's still not working. But it's not working because of this bottom option, which is any non-list. Restart your numbering anytime you encounter something that isn't a list. That's not what we want. Manual is what we want, only when we say to start the renumbering. And that changes this from 1 to 11. And the list goes all the way through. So we can click OK on that. We can look at the entire page. And we have 60 items here. Now we need some extra items. And I'm looking at this, and when I did it, it filled it. So something strange has happened with the formatting, but let's not worry about it. Right, what I will show you is there was some steak in here. Steak and strawberry sauce. Who in the right minds would eat that? So there's no strawberries. So that needs to disappear. But we don't want the Singapore style fillet steak to be 51 anymore. That would need to be 50. So when we delete the text and then delete one more, you can see that the Singapore style steak is now 50 and the other thing is 51 underneath it. Right, another thing I'll show you is if you need to add something. So to the starters, I'm going to press enter and you can now see that the Kung Po chicken is 12, not 11, because I am going to add seaweed. So I pressed enter, I've typed the word seaweed, I press tab. It puts in the tab leaders there, which are dot leaders, and then I put the price of the seaweed in. So let's say the seaweed is £4.50, like that. So it all totally works. Now, I think what I must have done was add more space, because this up here that isn't quite filling it did fill it. So I'm thinking at this stage, maybe I need to edit the menu item thing again. And instead of having it 10, have it 11. That looks much better. Right. So I don't know why I had it 10. Who knows? But at 11, it looks absolutely perfect. So I'm going to save that. Right. That is the new method and how to create the menu. The creation of the menu would have been identical in the old method. Where things start to diverge is what happens next when it comes to creating the output that you need. So I'm going to save that file because we are going to use it. Right, so what we had with this one, and I know we've taken this a lot further, but we created 6 pages in 2 spreads. So by comparison to what we had with the first one, there were only 2 pages. We actually have 6 pages in this one. But it looks very similar in the pages panel, but there is a difference. So underneath the pages, it's got pages 1 to 3 and 4 to 6. It also has in the lower left that we're looking at 4, 5 and 6 of 6 pages. So there is a fundamental difference. Right, so we need to export for print. So when I created that, I think I did set it up for print. So let's go and have a look at that. Right, it's all there and it's all ready to go. I just need to export it. So when I'm exporting it for print, I would have settings from my print service, and I do. So if we go to export, here it is. Now, the first thing to think about is they will tell you what format they want. It could be JPEG, depends who's printing it. Most of the time, it will be a PDF. Now, you already have in here a whole range of PDFs. Use the one that your printer asks for. Unless their settings are unique. Guess who's got a printer who uses unique settings? Oh, that would be me. They gave me a set of settings and said, use those. And I said, that's great. That's for InDesign. So I had to interpret those settings, which I did. And my print company is Printed Easy. So I created my own custom setup for printing. Let's have that a little bit wider so we can see it. Right. Pretty much avoid digital if it's for print. What I set up in here was the fact that I wanted all the spreads, and I've set up what to happen, what to rasterize if it's needed. I've also gone down here and you will be given compatibility. So there's a whole range of compatibility options as well. But mine was set to 1.7. That was what it said in their spec. Colour space is CMYK for print. They use something called coated fogra, but there's a whole range in there. If you're not sure, there is a general one somewhere. I think, is it web coated? No, generic CMYK. But I was actually told by my print company they use Fogra 39, so I set that. I've embedded the colour profiles. I've also said honour the spot colours and overprint black. And as we go down here, you can see I've included the bleed, printer's marks, the crop marks, and the registration marks, but not the colour bars. They didn't want the colour bars. But all I did was take this InDesign formatted set of outputs and interpret it into here. That is all I did. Notice that I'm embedding the fonts. It's unlikely that they've got Chinese takeaway to hand, I would have thought. So I'll embed the fonts. And that is what I've got set up in there. All right, I then hit export and it takes me out to here, which is the folder that I'm working in today, which is this one. So this is for print, exporting for print. So I will put it in there and we will export it to that and save that. Right, what that will look like, I will go and show you that when it's finished creating it. Export for print. There we go. That is what that looks like. So you can see all the fancy marks on it and the time and the date and all of that information. That is what they have asked for. These little marks that you see there and there, that's the cut line. So everything, in this case to the left of it, that one, and above that one is the bleed. And that is why we take the images into the bleed. When it is cut, we want it to be absolutely perfect. We don't want it cutting to a white edge. I'm sure you've all seen that. And that is what that looks like. That is what my print service need. That might not be what your print service needs, but I would imagine it would look something similar to that. Were you about to say something there, Mike? No? Okay, right. So That is producing it for print, where we've got 2 pages with our 6 pages on 2 spreads. But as far as our printer's concerned, there's 2 pages there, a front and a back, and they are good to go. Okay, so that's the first one. That is what we end up with, something that looks similar to that. Now remember that we sized these for print, so the print fold and all the rest of it should be absolutely perfect. When we're exporting a digital version, it really doesn't matter. But there's 2 different ways to export a digital version. One is spreads, the other is pages. So let's have a look at exporting the spreads, but doing it digitally. What is different about it? Well, in our file and export, I'm using the shortcut key, which is why I don't usually go into the menu, but that's where you'll find it. Right, in here, I do want a PDF, but I don't want this kind of PDF. Now, we have done this at times with certain things we've done, where we've created one PDF and then somebody wants to see it, but they're not the print company. And we've already created that one. And I'm sure you've seen things like that. And all that's happened is somebody has created one PDF. They've not made a digital specific PDF. We don't want it to look like that if somebody wants to look at this on their tablet or their phone. So we have other options in here, 2 of which are digital. Digital small size, digital high quality. If I'm producing this, always use digital high quality. Notice what happens in the preview. You lose all of those printer's marks and stuff like that. So it's going to look great, but it's going to be 3 individual pages put out as one spread. And then you will have another. So it will pretty much be the print version without all the print options. I do want the best quality, but I compress it in a different way. That's why I ignore small size. So we will go into here. Let's have a look what we've got. Area, we want all the spreads. Then we've got qualities that are set in here. We've got formats that are set in here. And you'll notice here that we're not including the bleed and the printer's marks, but we do include the hyperlinks and bookmarks. Now, why would that matter? Well, I haven't created any, but imagine that Dragon's Delight, underneath their phone number, have their URL. You could make that clickable or tappable by making sure that you have these slid to the right, which is why we choose digital high quality, because if you choose for print or press ready, you do not get clickable links. And then all we need to do is export. Now that was exporting for print. We're not exporting for print. We've got spreads this time. So that one's going to be spreads. So I'll call it the same, but we know what it is. And let's have a look at that one. Very, very similar to the first one, just without all the printer's detritus on there. Now, at this point, let's close that. I will bring this on so you can see the size of it. And it's 6.7 meg. Oh, 6.7. Right, I'm going to duplicate that. And this is exactly what I do. This is my process. I'm making a copy of the original. And then I take that and I send it to an app called PDF Optim. And this will allow me to compress it. If I use the medium compression, my file will end up 807K. Oh, people on mobile are going to love you. What you're looking at here is the left-hand side is the original. The right-hand side is the compressed version. And you can zoom in to look at the quality. The quality is not the same. Look at the colour that we've got here on the Chinese food. Look at the colour. But it looks absolutely fine. It's not like it's poor quality. It's just a slightly different colour. I could say low compression, which would give me 1.4 and better images. But to be honest, I don't think it needs it. It's going to look absolutely fine. You can scroll through this. There's not a pixelation in sight on the text. The image will look slightly different, but not different enough that I am concerned in the slightest about it. In fact, for digital viewing, I think the one on the right looks better. And then all I need to do is export that. So notice I did not make any changes to that. Now when we look at this, there is the original at 6.7 meg and the new one compressed 807k. That is why I use PDF Optim for that. So that was our first option there. We are now going to move on to something completely different, which is, that's what we had this time. We exported the spreads. Now, it looks as if the output, it looks as if it were designed A4 or letter. Looks identical. Exporting the pages would have resulted in something completely different, and that is what I'll do now. You may want to do this, even though the other one looked fantastic. You may want to do this. So File Export. I am exporting still to high quality. There's one difference I'm going to make here, which is towards the top where it says all spreads. No, let's say all pages. It will eventually catch up here, and this will show you what that will actually look like. So I'll export the pages this time. Now, I may need for this to be absolutely perfect, for the pedants out there, for this to be perfect, I may need to reorganize these pages. Who knows? We'll find out. But there is a reason that I'm doing this version. Two reasons, actually, but this is particularly one. So let's export that. This time, we're going for pages. So let's put that in there. Sorted it out. Let's go and have a look at that. Let's bring this on. Again, it's 6.7 because even if they're separate, it's going to be the same size. I could show you the compression again, but let's just open it and have a look at it and see why. Right, so I will fix this as well. But what we've got here is, there's the banquet, there's the back, there's the front, and these are the middle panels. As I said, we're being pedantic. This should be at the back, and that should be somewhere near the back. Right, what we can do in here is view and contact sheet. Now, I'm using preview on a Mac. Pretty much any PDF reader should be able to do this for you. But what you can do is you can just reorganize these pages by dragging and dropping. So if they don't come out in the right order, you can reorder them. Right, if we now go back into not contact sheet, so let's look at the thumbnails or whatever. Why may I produce this? And the answer's simple. While it doesn't look quite as impressive as the spreads, imagine that people are trying to order on their phone. And this is far easier to read. So they can rattle off they want a 42, a 32 and a 12. Far easier from that. And that is a good reason to use it. I would compress it exactly the same way as I did the other one. But there is a difference between creating a PDF of a spread and a PDF of pages. That is what the difference is. So that one is absolutely perfect if what you want to do is to provide maybe two versions on a website of Dragon's Delight. Now, there's two exports left. So the next one is exporting as images. But what I'm exporting is spreads as images. So let's have a look at that one. Notice that all of this is the same file. I'm not making any changes to this now. I have saved this file and I'm just exporting it in completely different ways from the same file. So let's export it again. Now, this time I'm going for JPEGs. You can choose which of these you want, but I have one that is a default that I've created, which strips the meta out, which makes the file slightly smaller, and it's at 90% quality, which is good enough. Now, what I want to do here is spreads. So, all spreads. It will give you that preview. It will also give you a size. So if you're exporting this for a particular reason, maybe to make mockups, or any other reason, you can choose the size. Then you've got the options down here, which are to do with colour and what quality you want it, and then export. So I'm going back to here. This export is going in, oh, that was pages. This is spreads. So let's put it in there as spreads and then show you what that looks like. That'll teach me to change the running order, won't it? Then my folders need renaming. Right, what it creates is it uses the name of the file and it creates two outputs. So basically it's the 2 pages. That is producing exactly what the old way would have produced, only it's using spreads, whereas in the old way it would have been pages. So we have 2 JPEGs. Right, that only leaves 1 export. So if you're doing a mock-up or you want to create something for the Dragon's Delight website, you could do that with it, where you export the menu and you're using it as branding. Maybe that is why you need to do it. But if it's a mock-up you're making, you're going to need the pages for this. Now, it does depend on the mock-up, but I'll talk about that when we've exported these pages. So let's do another export, final one. This time, individual pages, all 6 of them. So file export. We will go for JPEG, but we will change spreads to pages. And that will export 6 pages. Those are the 6 pages that we've got. So let's take these out, and this time they're going in images as pages. So let's put them in there. Right, and what that looks like, I'm sure you've got a shrewd idea of what that looks like. It gives us 6 JPEGs, 1 for each panel. Like that. That is what they look like. Right, you may want that for branding. I have seen Chinese sites, admittedly this was a while ago, but I have seen Chinese sites that do take their menu, cut it up into 6 pieces and put it up there as an image. Not the best way to do it, but that's what they can do. So that is one thing to do with it. But what we're going to do from these individual pages that we've exported here, we're going to be making a nice, pretty mock-up from it. So we will be making a mock-up. I have found a free mock-up. So I'll put that on the screen and I will explain while it's there. If you want to follow along, you can download that free Trifold mock-up. I have used this one, and I can guarantee that that one does work on Affinity. Not all mock-ups that you find will work in Affinity. I get increasingly fraught when they don't work in Affinity because they work perfectly in Adobe Photoshop. But that one, I have had luck with. It does seem to work okay. So if you want something where you're actually doing it, that is a good one to use. If you want just to practice with it, that is a good one to use. But if you download a mock-up from somewhere else and you open it, you try and use it, it just doesn't work. Now, when I say it doesn't work, maybe the shadow's off, it could be that the graphics are off, it could be that there's just no perspective on it. The things that are wrong with it are many, but it's literally just the fact that 99.9% of these were made in Photoshop. You can make these mock-ups in Affinity. Not many people do it. If you want a session on that, put it in the chat. Put a comment and I'll know. I could show you how to actually make that from scratch, but we are going to use this mock-up to create our menu. That's what we are heading off to do. So I will show you what that looks like, which is making a mock-up. So what we've got here is, this is one that I've done that's complete. What you'll download is this zip file. When you double click and unzip that, you will get this folder. And this is what you will find inside it. So at the top, you've got some instructions and more instructions and licenses. You'll also have here, where it says background texture, you've got a wood texture for the background. That's what you've got in there. The rest of these are different versions of the back cover, front cover, whether it's opened. So this is what they look like. That's the JPEG, that's the PSD. That's a different style. So these are a range of different styles that you can use. You've got all of these different options. Notice in terms of fitting the panels to this, that is not a roll fold. That is a Z fold. So all bets are off as to the width of the panels. So way back at the beginning, if you can remember that far back, I said we can fix it. So we have got panels that are print size panels, and this is a digital mock-up. We can fix that. We would also have to fix it, given that that is a Z fold and not a roll fold, which is why the type matters. So going up a level, I picked this Photoshop file to use and to show you how to do the mock-up in it. That's the one we'll be using. Right, so let's take that out of the way and open up that file. Right, let's have a look what we've got. Always do this when you're working with stock files. Go to your Layers panel and have a look what you've got. Now that might sound idiotic, but notice that we've got the cover, the middle page and the left page. Notice that next to them they have a particular symbol, and the particular symbol is telling you that they are embedded files. Also notice you can't see them. They are turned off, the visualization is turned off. When you select them though, there is a square selected in the middle of the screen. If you turn them on, that's where you will see them, in the middle of the screen. That's why they're turned off, because these embedded files are then in this group as the cover, the middle page and the left page. Notice they are embedded as well. They are not two different versions of them. This cover file here is that file there. In Photoshop, Photoshop can do magic that Affinity can't with mockups. Affinity can do just enough. A Photoshop can make magic. So in Photoshop, they do tend to put them in separately at the top. It doesn't matter which one you edit. I tend to ignore the ones at the top. So this is the cover. This is the one that I want to edit. To edit it, you double click on the thumbnail. So double click on the thumbnail, it opens up another file. So we've got our file that we've been working on. We have the demo file I've just opened, and now we've got an embedded file that is embedded inside the demo file. What we need to do is go find those panels that we exported as pages, which were not that one. It was images as pages. There we go. So these are the files that I exported, if you remember. So we just need to work out which one's the front cover, which is number 3. And drag that and drop it in there. Right. Now we need to move it into place. So let's move it into place. And now you should see the problem. We had this for print, and this is too narrow for the mock-up. We could stretch it, obviously. If you stretch it, it will stretch too much top and bottom. Now you've got 2 millimeters over at the top. So let's undo that. Before you stretch it sideways, and you'll never notice it's 1 millimeter, hold down the Shift key. That will enable you to stretch it 1 millimeter to the side, everything fits, and the top and bottom remain the same. You don't even have to close that before you go back and see that it is perfect. And then you can close it. Right, next we need to do the back, which is this middle one here. Double click again, go and find the right image, which is this one, which is the back, and let's put that in. That is also too short. So let's stretch that out with the Shift key and head back in. And this third panel, that's going to have the banquet menu on it. So let's go into there, go find the banquet menu, drag drop, and there we go. And all of them are a bit short. That's strange, isn't it? But never mind. There we go. We fixed it. And that is what that would look like. Now, obviously, you would then do the same again with another copy of it for the inside. I'll leave that because it's exactly the same demo as that. What I will show you is the background looks a bit blurred, doesn't it? Bit bland. Bit bland, that grey. You might think, well, I'll turn it off. Here's the background. I'll turn the background off. I'll get nice transparent background. Yeah, sort of. But you've lost a lot of other stuff that's going on there. In fact, looking at that, I can tell that this mock-up has a problem. Which is, if I zoom into here, that's not lined up properly, is it? What were they thinking? Right, which one is it? I think it's the left page. It is. It's no, hang on. That's the middle page. That's the left page. So what I've done is I've clicked here. Instead of clicking on the thumbnail, I've clicked on the perspective. That has opened the live perspective. This was part of a demo I wasn't intending to do. This is how you add perspective to it, right? So that has enabled that. If I close that, you'll see you don't select that there. So what I need to do is open up the perspective, and now I can grab that and move it into place. So it actually works. Don't delete it, don't reset it, just close it. And then if you need to go in a little bit more, it's still not right, is it? Oh, I didn't make this. I downloaded this. Right, this is the problem. This is why you have to know how to do everything, because something's bound to not be right. There we go. That's right. So let's have a look at that. Have we got any problems anywhere else? And no, don't go looking for trouble, woman. Right, there we go. So I was saying the background looked a bit bland, which was when I discovered a problem. Oh, that's definitely not right. What's it doing? Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. This is Affinity acting up. Don't do that. Just stop. Right, sometimes it does that. What I would say is save constantly as you're working. Save constantly. Right, and that looks here as though I need to do a little bit of tweaking, which I do, but I'm not going to do that right now. What I'm trying to show you, and have been for the last 3 minutes, is that the background, it's bland. Let's not have it bland. So what we can do in Affinity is we can go up to Pixel and go to Fill Layer. This is a special kind of layer. It does one thing, which is provide the ability to change that colour. It will enable you to put a fill in it. So you can see here we've got a fill, and that fill is white. It doesn't look good at the moment, but bear with me. Right, it needs to have a colour, and for Chinese, red works well as a starting point. Still not great though, because we've lost the drop shadow and everything else off it. But if we add this fill layer, and we change the format of it, the blend mode, to multiply or darken, in fact, you could play around with any of these, I would say multiply, we get the shadow back, and we are able to change the background colour. In terms of, if that red isn't quite right, let's get that to the side. Let's have a play around with it. We could make it much darker. We could make it much lighter. We could make it purple. Or change the colour in any way you want. So you're not stuck with that grey background, even though you can't turn it off. Now, what happens with your mockup depends on the specific mockup you're using. Obviously in here you've seen I've got a problem that didn't line up, needed editing. Now the top needs editing. And the background colour, this is the only way to change it without a lot of grief. Sometimes when you download a mockup, it works perfectly with Affinity, and they have provided you the ability to change the colour. But I'll be honest with you, that doesn't happen often. So knowing how to work with a mockup that only half works because it was never intended to be used in Affinity is a good skill to develop. So I think I quite like the turquoisey bit. Oh, I think that looks quite nice. And there you have a mockup. Okay, so we took those 6 panels and we placed them. I placed 3 and they were lined up properly as well. So we've covered loads, absolutely loads. We looked at the sizing, we learnt about fold types. There was the old way of doing it, which wasn't exactly retired. It depends on how you choose to work, but the new way gives you a little bit more flexibility. Once we'd done the entire design, and I appreciate your design may be different, if you want to try recreating that one, I will give you the asset links in a second. But it's always better if you're trying to learn to actually do it, to not start with, and here's the finished version and try and unpick it. No, start from the beginning and try and do it. Then we exported for print. We did 2 different print exports. We did 2 different digital versions for spreads and pages. We did exporting as images as spreads and pages, and that enabled us to make the mockup itself. And we will be going into the Q&A very shortly. Now, we've already been asked for the font. The font is called Chinese Takeaway. It is dafont.com. Many years ago, I had an entire collection of Chinese style fonts because my demo data was for a company called Panda Confectionery Products. And it even had a little panda as a logo. I need to dig that out again. But that was the one that I used this time. You'll find that at Dafont. The second one was the headings font. That was Impact. That came from a different site, dafontfree.io. So you'll find the impact font there. You may find these fonts elsewhere. This was just when I was looking for them and I wanted free versions of them. Then you've got Pop-ins, which is available from Google Fonts. And that is what I use for the menu items themselves. It's a nice, clean, clear font. I think that's an alternative to something like Arial, which is quite dated these days. Then there's the two images that I use. Now, these are part of Envato Elements, which is a subscription service, but I've put them down there anyway in case you want to have a look. You can either buy them separately or you can create a subscription to Elements. I think from memory it's around £15 a month, but you can download as much as you like, and not just in terms of photos, but also artwork, sounds, graphics, videos, you name it. So that was the one I used for the cover, and that was the one that I put on the inside. And the last thing that I had was the entire mock-up, and trust me, I've downloaded and tried about 50 mock-ups, and 49 of them didn't work. So that's why I ended up with this one. And you saw that we still had problems with that one. But hopefully I've given you enough tips and tricks that you'll be able to fix that. Right, so those were the resources. You can find everything I do on demand at youtube.com/Elaine Giles. There is a dedicated Affinity playlist called Affinity with Elaine. That is the QR code for that. It started early November when I did everything you need to know to get started. We then did a layout. We then moved on to deep diving data merge. We then created calendars. That was a fun session. I actually think I like the planner pages more. And then we did 2 weeks. We did designing a photo book and advanced photo book techniques. And obviously today, this video will be available on the same playlist. There is a like button down there. If you have not smashed it yet, consider it now. I'd be very grateful. You can also subscribe and you'll be notified whenever I'm going live. That's going to be important given what I've got coming up in the moment. Right, you cannot leave a comment when we're live. And I know we have hundreds of people with us live. It's infuriating. You can only do that after the live stream. But we do send you a link if you subscribe to the newsletter, to the recording. And all you need to do is go, and you don't even need to type anything. We've taken to choosing an emoji, and today's emoji is the Chinese takeaway emoji. So if you've made it this far, celebrate and let me know by adding a comment and adding that takeout icon to your comment. The more comments a video gets, the more YouTube like it, and the more YouTube like it, the more people they show it to, and the more people they show it to, the more I like it, and the more chance there is, a much greater chance that I will do more sessions. So that's why it's important. Now, what have we got next time? Oh, this one's been much requested. And even if you're not a scrapbooker, there'll be lots of techniques that you will learn from and be able to transition into other things that you do. But notice, this is why the notifications are important. It is not, repeat, not next Sunday. It is next Saturday, which is, and it's also a different time. It is 7 p.m. UK time. That is 11 a.m. on the West Coast, so Kim won't have to get up quite so early. It is, what is it on the East Coast, Mike? It's 2, no it's not, it's 2 o'clock. What do you mean it's 10 o'clock? No, it's not. Oh, good grief, he's lost the will to live. No, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, isn't it? It's 4 hours plus 1, which is 5. Yes, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're in Central Europe, I appreciate it's a little bit close to bedtime, isn't it? It's 8 o'clock. But I'm having to, the alternative is not doing it at all, because I'm on a 2-day mastermind. So I wouldn't be able to do it at all. But I thought, you know what? Let's move it to the evening and have an in the dark session. So that's what we're going to do. So as I say, although it's scrapbooking, so if you're a scrapbooker, it's going to be perfect for you. But there's lots of techniques involved in scrapbooking that you would be able to transition to other things. So thank you for being with me, particularly if you've made it this far. That is excellent. I'm very impressed. Those are my socials. It's getting pretty quiet on Blue Sky, so do contemplate Blue Sky. It's like Twitter without the toxicity, is how I describe it. And you will obviously know my YouTube channel. Facebook, I'm not so great, but I have posted a couple of things. And there's my newsletter, which you will find at elainegiles.com/VIP, which is where you will get first notification of everything that I'm doing. So that's your QR code. That's the link. Do subscribe. It would be most appreciated. So we're going to head off into Q&A, and I'm assuming we have got some questions, Mike. I knew we would have. Excellent. So hit me with the questions.
From Solmat Solhat. Place text versus copy text. When to use what? Paste without format. Could you please comment on these options?
Okay, paste without format means that you paste in plain text. Now you saw that my files were plain text to start with. The rationale of plain text is if you copy and paste with styles, your styles panel will get polluted with styles that you may not actually want. And whether you want them or not, it gives you another job that you didn't have before, that you now need to sort the styles panels out, or it'll become a mess. So I always paste without styles unless I do want the styles from the source data. And then what I do is delete the local styles and paste in with the styles coming with it. So it really depends on the actual job itself. There is no single right answer. It depends on the job. I personally always format within Affinity. So my styles are always in Affinity. The reason is if you bring styles in from Word, it doesn't create a style tree. Word has no concept of a style tree. There are no nested styles. So it just brings in, it spews up the styles into the styles panel in a mess. So that's why I tend not to do it. But if you have a Word document and it's styled to perfection for you, and you want to bring it into Affinity to finesse it, maybe put the graphics in, then absolutely, but delete the styles first. I will show you that. If you are in a document, so we'll get a new document, doesn't matter that there's anything else, you have default text styles. None of these are in use at the moment because, there's no text. But you have all of these styles and they're not used. So what you can do from the disclosure V there, that used to be a triangle, but now it's a V, you can in here delete unused styles. None of them are used, so it deletes the lot. If some of them are used, then it leaves those alone. You can also, in here, if you wanted to, go through it and delete them one at a time. So if you find that you've done the delete styles and some of them are still left, you can do them individually. But be aware that what will happen is you will have text that's formatted and it will be orphaned from its style because there is no style left there. But the key, as far as I'm concerned, is losing the styles that are there. So delete the unused ones, which leaves me just no style and no style, and then import from Word. Can I quickly do that? Do I have a Word file? Let's open Word and do... is that thing still good in Word, Mike? What was it? Where you get sample text.
Yeah.
And it rand.
Equals rand, isn't it? Open brackets.
Oh, I know. We've got to have 6, 7, haven't we? Let's have 6, 7. I think it's 6,7. That'll do. Right. It gives you sample text. That's all I've done. It gives you sample text. So within here, I would probably want to have some headings. So let's put a heading 1 there, and let's put a heading 1 up here. Right, and then let's get some format on it. I've also turned the pilcrows on, so let's turn those off. I was busy working with text, don't ask, it was a long story. Right, there's a heading 1. There is a heading 1. Let's make that a heading 2. There's a heading 2. So I've got some styles in this document. So this is normal style. It's just text. And this is a heading 1, and this is a heading 2. I'm lying, it's a heading 2. Right, so let's save that file, and we will put that in here as Word sample. And let's take it in and see what happens. So close that. Right, so we're bringing it into here. We could do with having somewhere to put it, couldn't we? So let's put a text frame on there, stick it in there. File, place, go find the Word file, which hopefully is in here. There we go, Word sample. Let's bring that in. And it's brought in the text, it's brought in the formatting. And notice what's happened over here. Oh, and it's also nested these. Made a liar out of me. It has nested those two. I've not had that. Maybe my Word file wasn't good. This was a brand new one, so maybe Word have sorted it out, but older files don't work that well. So you have your no style characters at the bottom, your no style paragraphs at the top, you have your normal style, and then your heading 1 and your heading 2. So if we were down here and we wanted to put in another heading 2, we put that in and apply heading 2 to it. Notice it's not the same size as this one, and there's where your trouble starts. Although technically it should be, in fact I've applied the wrong one, haven't I? There you go, I hit heading 1 while I was there, so that's working. But all of the options that you've got in Affinity, not all of them were there in Word. So there are things you can do in Affinity that you couldn't do in Word, but at least you've brought in the styles and you understand the naming structure that you've got because it's come from your Word file. But it was made a lot easier by deleting those styles first. If you don't delete those styles that you're not using, they're going to sit in here and confuse you. And it would be far too easy to apply one of those styles. As you've seen, it is literally, I'm next to the heading 2. It's far too easy to just apply a style when you're doing that. So it's easier not to do that. It's easier to get rid of them. So hopefully that will explain that. But there isn't a definitive answer. It depends what you're doing. What else have we got?
Okay, again from Solmat Solhat.
Oh, hang on. There was another part to that question, wasn't there? Which was linking or embedding the file. If you're, generally speaking, when you place text, you place it and you embed it. And that means that the text moves and it moves into Affinity. There is an option in version 3 where you can link to it. I think I explained that clearly enough in the entire session when I was talking about if you wanted to change the menu items. But the thing you have to be careful of if you're linking text, in embedding it, you're fine as long as you're the one making the changes to the menu. But if somebody else is making changes to the menu, you don't want to have to manually take those changes and add them, nor do you want to re-import the original text file or the Word file, because all the changes that you've made in Affinity will be lost. So because of that, you might choose to link to the file. Linking to the file is fine. The biggest caveat in linking is making sure that you don't have overflowing text, because somebody could have added 3 starters and now the text doesn't fit in the space that you had. That's the biggest issue with it. Okay, let's have the next question.
Okay, again from Solmat Solhat. Is there any way of making the tab stops automatically set themselves to the centre and or right edge of a text box, or would I need to get the measurements and calculate manually?
If you want, I think the right edge. I'm not sure on that one. I don't think so, no. What I do is turn on the ruler, and that makes everything a whole lot easier. If you've never seen that option, when you have a text frame like that, so let's say we got one text frame there and another text frame there. Let's link the two together like that. Each individual text frame has its own ruler. So you've got the ruler at the top, but you also have an individual ruler. And you turn that on with this option that looks like a crown, the frame text ruler. And that just makes it a whole lot easier. And you can actually set them from here. So you could, with that, grab that across. That sets the start of that. And you can set the tabs with this. And these separate as well, like that. So you can do quite a lot with that ruler. So that might make it a little bit easier for you. But setting it to the centre, you tend to set the text to the centre rather than the tab to the centre. Because, you know, if you set it to the centre and then you change the size of it, the centre isn't going to be the centre. So I would say no on that one. Okay, what else we got?
Okay, this one prompted a lot of discussion in the chat, and it's to do with Affinity version 1 and 2 and upgrading to 3. So SFN and Tish were saying, I'm pretty sure you can run versions 1 to 3 with no issues. I'm sure Elaine can confirm version 2 and 3 when it came out. I haven't used version 2 since installing, but it doesn't overwrite or ask you to delete. Okay,
right. You have to be quite careful with that. Right, so let's get this out of the way. Right. I'm using an app called Raycast, which that's irrelevant, apart from the fact that this is how I run apps. So if I type Affinity into there, you can see how many versions of Affinity I've got installed. I've got the current version, which is the top one. I've got Affinity Publisher 2, Designer 2, and Photo 2. But notice I've also got the Affinity Publisher 2 betas. Publisher beta, Photo beta, and Designer beta. You can run, that would be what? 9, 10 different versions. You could run version 1 of all the apps, version 2 of all the apps, the beta of all the apps, and version 3 of the app with no problem whatsoever. Here's the caveat to that. Stop before you run off and try and do it. On a Mac, not a problem at all. On a Mac, your applications are in a folder called Applications, helpfully enough. So this is what that looks like. And there they all are. So there are the applications. And they all live separately. You'll notice with the file size of these, they all contain everything as well. So they're huge. They're not sharing stuff like Windows does. So in Windows, they tried to optimize things by having like a shared folder for apps like these. So on a Mac, no problem at all. On Windows, be careful when you install it. So pretty much when you come to install it, on a Mac, it will install to the applications folder. And because they've all got different names, and if you look at my Camtasias here, they've all got different names as well. They all happily coexist. They can even run at the same time. Not a problem. On Windows, at the point you come to install, it will prompt you for a location. If that location that you installed version 2 in is used for version 3, bad things will happen. Things will get overwritten. So the best advice on Windows is to install to separate folders. And as long as you do that, you can use any version you like. I've just created, this is complicated. Right, let's simplify it. I don't have a physical Windows machine. What I have is a virtual machine. And my virtual machine runs Affinity. But my virtual machine is brand new. So it didn't have the original Affinity apps on it. So when I came to install version 3, I could just install it into a folder called Affinity and everything was good. But if I'd have got an older VM and I had all the version 2 apps and even the version 1s on it, I would have to have been a little bit less cavalier when I was installing and make sure I installed it to its own folder. Anecdotally, because this has not happened to me because of that, but anecdotally I have heard that if you do install version 3 over the top of version 2 is still there, but it puts up some strange dialog boxes demanding that you log in to your Canva account before it will work. So technically it will work, but it's as though it's kind of injected Canva into the version 2 apps, and you now need to log in with your Canva account to make it work. That is what I've heard. I cannot guarantee that, but that's what I've heard. But yes, technically you can install as many as you like. Just be careful on Windows. Right, what else have we got?
Okay, next one from Serendon Photo. Can you change the decimal point to a comma for tab alignment?
Decimal point. Well, you can, but for tab alignment, yes, you can set up anything you like. I'm sure you can. Yeah. If you want to do that, obviously I did it with the decimal because I was aligning to the decimal. In different countries, which was why there was no pound sign or no dollar sign, it was just a price. In different countries, what does Sweden use? Yeah.
Comma.
Right, so Sweden uses a comma automatically. Part of that will be in Affinity and part of that will be based on your system. So if you have a system and the location is set to Sweden, you will have totally different formatting applied by default. And again, it will be different on Mac to Windows. So on a Mac, this can actually be quite infuriating with Excel, can't it? Excel, as an application, will use the system settings. Affinity will let you override that by using custom settings, which is better. That is better than Excel. But it's going to depend on multiple things. It's going to depend on what your system settings are set to and then what custom settings you set. So yours might not be a full stop to start with. It would just depend on where you are in the world.
Okay, from Ignacio, with the dot tab marker, that point to the price, is there an option to space each dot?
I think there is, yes, but I didn't bother because otherwise the demo would have been 9 hours. And who wants that? Someone's going to say they want 9 hours now.
Probably. Team Western Production, can you put currency, for example, pound signs?
You can put whatever you like, and that was the reason that I didn't. I didn't because I just wanted it to be sort of plain vanilla. So it worked for anybody, but yes, you can put whatever you like in.
Okay, Mark D. Eric, is there a website that explains different models and dimensions of brochures, and they're in Europe?
I've not seen one that's perfect, no. You saw the little diagrams that I did. The best thing you could do is search for print services that have put tutorials up and explanations of what they need for print. So instead of looking for Affinity tutorials or Photoshop tutorials, don't. Look for print folds, and you may find something there.
That might answer Tish's question. Is there a video on how to print from Affinity? I have my own printers here, but sometimes think I'm not printing using the best settings.
Again, that's going to depend on the printer. I got a message this week that if you're on a certain chip of Windows machine, you can't print to a Canon printer. And I'm like, what? That's crazy, but it's going to depend on the printer. So it might be worthwhile checking your printer options, because most of the time you install a printer and you leave it alone. You might not have updated the drivers, which is always worthwhile, because, I mean, our printers are a black and white laser thing, isn't it? So we don't really need to do that. But if you've got a fancy colour printer, then keeping the driver up to date is important, and following the instructions from the manufacturer is important. Beyond that, you can get little sort of helper applications when it comes to imposing pages. So you could do that as well. But I would start with the printer settings and the manufacturer's instructions, because they will, although they won't be specific to Affinity, they will be specific to the printer, and that's more important at the stage of printing than Affinity is, because you can produce all kinds of output from Affinity, but the printer's probably going to be doing its own thing. Okay, what else we got?
Okay, from SFN, there used to be a setting in Affinity 2 that you had to enable to help with opening PSD files. Anyone know if it's still there or required in version 3?
It is still there in version 3, so let's head off and have a look. It's really an option as to what you want to happen. So, this is general. Oh, good grief. Oh, we can search. Right, let's search for PSD and see what comes up. Oh, great, it's in general. You're not being specific enough there. Right, it's down here. There's one. I'm not sure if there's more than one. Here we go. Right, this one is importing Photoshop files. And when you do, import the text as text, not bitmap. Now, obviously, that's critical if you're opening an Adobe Photoshop file and you're looking to edit the text. If you bring it in as bitmap, you won't be able to edit it. So that one is turned on. I must admit, I can't remember if that is the default or not, but that's one option, and that's what it's for. Right, another one is this one here, where by default, if you open a Photoshop file, you can't save it as a Photoshop file. So we can actually see that because we've got this one here, which is at the moment a Photoshop file. If you look there, it says PSD. If I were to Command and S to save it, it won't save it. It prompts me to save it. So let's save that in the root of that folder. Then let's go and have a look at that folder. And you will find in there, let's fold all of this up. There it is. And now it's an Affinity file. So it doesn't let you overwrite the Photoshop file by default. But you can change that. So if you enable this, it will let you overwrite the Photoshop file. There is no need for me to do that. I'm not saving to Photoshop, ever. Right, the other option you've got in here is importing smart objects where possible. That is critical that that is enabled, which it is, for files like the one here to work. So there are quite a few options in here for Photoshop files they're 3 of them, the most important ones, and that's what I would have them set to and why. The only excuse for having this one enabled, where you're saving over an imported Photoshop file, is if you're handing it back to somebody who's using Photoshop and not Affinity. Affinity can read Photoshop files. Photoshop cannot, as I'm aware, read Affinity files. So you may need to do that. But even if I were doing that, I think I'd save it as an Affinity file and then do a save as and export it out to Photoshop. I'd probably do it that way. And that way I've got a native Affinity file. Okay.
Okay, last question, unless any more come in from SFN. Can you quickly go over the trick you had for finding tools, etc. within Affinity? And I think that was using Raycast.
Okay. Oh, the Windows user's going to be really annoyed at this point. Okay. There is an application on the Mac called Raycast. Now, this is because there is a built-in system option on the Mac, and that is called Spotlight. Mine's turned off. I'm not interested in Spotlight. But there are a range of applications on the Mac called launchers. And what ostensibly they're for is to launch applications. So if I wanted to launch Word, you saw me do that. I bring up my launcher, in this case it's Raycast, and I type Word. And it filters through all of the applications and says, oh, Word, you want to do that. So I press enter, right? And it will run Word. There is another application on the Mac that will do that called Alfred. This is what that looks like. So I type Word and it filters and shows me Microsoft Word. This is what these applications do. That's a launcher. Now there is one on Windows. Help me out, Mike. What was it called?
The Power Toys one.
It's the Power Toys one.
Power Toys Run.
Power Toys Run is available to be a launcher on Windows. Now, Raycast is also available for Windows, but it's in beta. And it is not fully functional. And it does not do what I'm about to show you that it does on the Mac. So yes, SFN, there is a Raycast version for Windows. It does not do what I'm about to show you just yet. But I know many, many people who have watched these sessions have been in touch with Raycast demanding that they add this feature. So I will now show you the feature, and then what you need to do is just go and bother Raycast until they add it. Right, one of the features, in addition to running the application. So if this application was hidden, and I then want to run it, I do that and I press enter and it brings it back. So I've hidden the application, it comes back. But Raycast is enabled to enable you to drill down into the menu structure of the Affinity app and every other app on your Mac. So underneath the help menu, I don't know if you're aware, but you have a search option. Raycast just externalizes that search option. So if I'm in here and I think, where's fill layer? If I type fill layer, it filters the menu and it shows me where that is. And I could press enter and it would execute that command. That is inside the application. It works at system level. And about 14-15 months ago, Affinity broke it. The forums were up in arms. It just didn't work. That didn't work. At which point I thought, can't live without that. This is driving me insane. So I've got a shortcut key that works for that. And that is how I used to use it. But once they broke it, I went to Raycast. This is what Raycast does. In Raycast, you have a range of commands. And one of them is search menu items. So if I start typing search menu items, it comes up. I then press enter, and that takes me into another lower level window within Raycast that shows me all of the commands, 639 of them, in Affinity. I call this menu surfing. So in here, if I'm looking for fill layer, you can see it filters. And what I want is that top one, new filter layer. And all I have to do at that point is press enter, and I get a new fill layer. You'll notice it's filled it with the same as it had, it just doesn't have a blend mode on it. But what it has done is the command that I executed. So let's undo that. Now, there is a faster way than that to work, because who wants to have to, 1, bring up Raycast, and then 2, start typing search menu items before pressing enter and then typing in what you want? You might as well memorize the menus for that. So, Raycast. Notice what happens when I start typing search menu items. Next to it, there is a shortcut key, which is Option, Shift, Command, and /. Why is it that? It's that because Shift, Command, / is what enables the menu help in here. So it's not as tricky to remember as you would think. Shift, Option, Command, /. Now, what that means is I'm in Affinity. I am not going to open Raycast. I am not directly, I'm not. I'm just going to use that shortcut key. And that brings up Raycast, but it drills me down to the search menu items before I even get going. So all I have to do is one shortcut key, fill, enter, and it does it. Although I think it might have done something different there. Hang on, a window fill. So I needed fill layer, press enter, and I'm done. So it doesn't really matter what I'm trying to do. That is a faster way to do it, much faster. So let's say I want to save as a template. Shortcut key, template, export as template. If I wanted to save it, save. And I've got file save, I've got default, save as package. What if I wanted to export that? And then I just type export. So it's a multi-step process. I've explained what it does in Raycast, but you can get faster by allocating a shortcut key. Now, I'm hoping that they do add that to the Windows version so I can use the Windows version of Affinity, because I've got no idea where anything is in the menu and I don't care. I really don't care. Now, when it comes to setting that up, the shortcut key, you need to go into Raycast, you need to go into its properties, and within there, you're in the settings. So in here, these are all the settings. Obviously, far faster to search menu items. When I do that, it filters, and this is the command. And that is where you set the shortcut key. If you want it to be called something else, you can add an alias as well. But the shortcut key is the trick for me. So I call that menu surfing. It's available in Raycast on the Mac, hopefully in the Windows version soon. It's a fast way just to navigate your menus. If you don't want to use Raycast to do that, and you are on a Mac, you still have this option in here which does the same thing, but is liable to be broken by either Affinity or Apple, depending on their mood. Whereas Raycast doesn't break. They're not stupid like that. So Raycast is pretty much guaranteed to work even when they break it. The way they do it is different, and that is how it works. So, does that answer that question? Mike's dropped off his twig.
No, I haven't.
Oh, excellent.
Oh,
I
thought you were asking SFN. Yeah.
No, I was asking you.
Oh, yes.
Right, excellent. So have we got any more questions on that?
No. That's it.
Oh, we are completely done with questions. Right. Well, don't forget next week, different time. Different day as well, to be honest. Right. Saturday, 7 o'clock. We're having an evening one. So the sun will be over the yard arm somewhere. Bring alcohol. Although I'm teetotal. But, you might enjoy that. So we're scrapbooking next time. But different day, different time. We will send out reminders. We will send out an announcement and a reminder. And YouTube is supposed to provide reminders if you hit the bell icon. So make sure you've done all of that, and then you won't forget. There'll be a reminder. And of course, there will be a replay as well. But I would love to see you there live. So let's have a look for the last ones here. Ignacio is saying, thank you very much. Another great session and Happy New Year to all. Indeed, Happy New Year to everybody. So yes, if you are in Europe, it will be 8 p.m. Central European time. But we figured it was still early enough to fit a show in, rather than not have one, because that was the alternative. So I'm either going to be completely energized after day one of my mastermind, or completely exhausted, one or the other. So do turn up so you can find out which it is. Excellent. Right, I think that's it then. SFN says never gets reminders. That's YouTube, not me. If you're on my list, then you should get the reminders. So if you mean from YouTube, that's a YouTube thing. They've got a mind of their own. Well, actually, I'm not sure if it qualifies as a mind. They do things, let's put it like that. And more importantly, they don't do other things. So that's a YouTube issue, unless you're talking about the list. Right, okay. Thank you very much for all of the lovely comments. Do have an excellent new year. I think I'm going to have a little bit of a break before New Year, before I gear up with my scrapbooking. And I hope you found everything that we did today useful. If you've got any questions, add a comment or get in touch with me. But beyond that, I'm going to say goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
We will both see you next time. Stay safe, guys.